Imagine for a moment, you're at the peak of your certainty, convinced that you're serving God in the purest way possible. But then, in a split second, a light brighter than the midday sun knocks you to the ground, and a voice asks, "Why are you persecuting me?" This was the most radical conversion experience in Christian history. Saul of Tarsus, the greatest persecutor of early Christians, became Paul, the apostle who brought the gospel to the ends of the known world. A transformation so extraordinary that it changed not just one man, but the destiny of billions of people for the next 2,000 years. If you've ever felt distant from God or questioned whether there's forgiveness for your mistakes, this story will impact your life forever. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos about saints and miracles that transform the world. But who was this man really before his encounter with Christ? Chapter 1. Who was Saul of Tarsus? Saul wasn't an ordinary persecutor. Born in Tarsus, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the Roman Empire, he possessed something rare for his time: Roman citizenship. Educated at the feet of Gamaliel, one of Jerusalem's most respected rabbis, Saul mastered both Jewish law and Greek philosophy. He was literally a man between two worlds. Here's a fact few people know. When Saul witnessed the stoning of Stephen, the first Christian martyr, he didn't just watch passively. Scripture tells us that the executioners laid their garments at the feet of a young man named Saul. This means he was recognized as an authority, someone they trusted to oversee a public execution. In his early 20s, Saul was already feared by Christians in Jerusalem, but there was something disturbing about the peace Stephen showed while dying, something Saul couldn't forget. Chapter 2. The Supernatural Encounter. It was noon when it happened. Saul was riding toward Damascus with letters of authorization from the high priest to arrest any followers of Jesus he might find. The 100-mile journey had already lasted 3 days when suddenly a light brighter than the sun enveloped the entire group. Luke, the evangelist and physician, describes 3 versions of this encounter in Acts, each revealing unique details. A medical curiosity. Saul's sudden blindness presented symptoms consistent with what we now know as temporary cortical blindness, when the brain can't process visual stimuli due to extreme sensory trauma. For 3 days, Saul remained in absolute darkness, neither eating nor drinking. Imagine, the man who had dedicated his entire life to studying Scripture suddenly understood that he had persecuted the very Messiah promised by the prophets. Every verse he had memorized, every prophecy he had studied, now took on new meaning. But God had already prepared someone to meet him in that condition. Chapter 3. The role of Ananias. Ananias was an ordinary Christian in Damascus, but his obedience would become extraordinary. When God asked him to visit Saul, his first reaction was terror. "Lord, I have heard from many about this man, and how much evil he has done to your saints in Jerusalem." Here we have one of the most touching scenes in the Bible. A persecuted Christian walking through the streets of Damascus to baptize his greatest tormentor. Ananias laid hands on Saul and said, "Brother Saul." Notice he called him brother even before baptism. Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he regained his sight. Discovering inspiring stories like this is what motivates us to keep sharing the lives of saints. By the way, if you want to learn more transformative stories and powerful prayers, don't miss our ebook, 50 Saints, Stories and Prayers for Divine Intervention, available in our store below the description. The man who entered Judas's house on Straight Street was Saul, the persecutor. The one who came out was Paul, the apostle. Chapter 4. The New Paul. From enemy to apostle. The transformation was immediate and radical. Paul began preaching in Damascus itself, causing such impact that local Jews conspired to kill him. Ironically, now he was the one who needed to flee, lowered in a basket over the city walls, like a fugitive. In the following 28 years, Paul traveled more than 10,000 miles on foot, establishing Christian communities on 3 continents. He wrote 13 letters that became part of the New Testament. That represents approximately 1/4 of all New Testament literature. But perhaps the most impressive fact is this: the man who once dragged Christians to prison ended up being himself imprisoned, flogged, stoned, and shipwrecked multiple times for preaching about Christ. Paul experienced in his own flesh the suffering he had caused others. And this radical transformation teaches us something profound about human nature. Chapter 5. The meaning for us today. Paul's conversion destroys any excuse we might have about being too far from God's grace. If God could transform the church's greatest persecutor into history's greatest evangelizer, then no one, absolutely no one, is beyond the reach of divine love. Modern neuroscientists study cases like Paul's to understand how mystical experiences can literally reorganize brain connections. But beyond science, Paul's conversion shows us that God doesn't waste anything from our previous experience. The zeal Paul had as a persecutor was channeled to become Christianity's greatest missionary. His Pharisaic education prepared him to debate with Jews. His Roman citizenship opened doors in the empire. His experience of suffering gave credibility to his words. Conclusion: Paul's story confronts us with an inevitable question. Where is your road to Damascus? Maybe you haven't had a dramatic supernatural experience, but God continues calling ordinary people to extraordinary purposes. The same light that blinded Saul still shines today, not always as a flash in the sky, but often as a gentle voice whispering in our hearts. Paul went from destroyer to builder, from persecutor to persecuted, from enemy to apostle. His conversion proves that no matter how distant you feel from God today, He can use exactly where you are as a starting point for where He wants to take you. Christ radically changed Paul, and He can do the same with you. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and share in the comments your own transformation experience. And remember, just like Paul, your story of change might be the testimony someone needs to hear today. Because in the end, we all have a bit of Saul waiting to become Paul.